I've been assuming, by the way, that that means that you're rolling. That's not some... Because that gets in an interesting area to say things like, well, should I take that personally? Because if a person is, then you got all kinds of possible Kyroots, like how far along the way of being this can you be and still pick it up if somebody goes... Or if you recall, how stupid can you be and still respond to someone calling you stupid? It's that kind of thing. Which gets... In some ways it's interesting, but it is a very viscid road to go down if you got an intellect somewhere with tires suitable to a Model T. It's hard to get in and get back out with any profit because you go, well, wait a minute. Because whatever answer you got, if you're really good, you think, well, wait a minute, that could be proof of how stupid I am that I even answered. That is, of how stupid can you be? Or if you like it another way, how unstupid, how not stupid can you be and still hear yourself accused of being stupid and in any way react? We may have made that sound more complex and convoluted than it is. The real answer is, all you got to be is, there you stand in the Long Branch, known as planet Earth, and somebody walks in the door, somebody ready for trouble, the weapon's drawn and says, I'm going to whip everybody's ass in here that's stupid. And immediately you go, hey, wait a minute, I'm not stupid. That kind of... That is an old joke that the Vikings, the Sumerians, bricklayers in Alabama back in the 50s have been directing at other groups of people, not just the stupid. It's been directed at people in the past, especially the Vikings and the bricklayers, toward perhaps people, men who walk funny. But it's an old joke of going in the bar and say, I'm going to kill and then just fill it in, blank in here. But the best one is, I'm going to kill everybody or whip everybody in here that's stupid. And now you stand and you think, I'll be damned if I'll be talked about that way. That's why I say, if you ever start, it's hard to go down that road. You may think, well, I'm just go out in the woods, maybe take an intellectual leak or look around, and I'll back up. I can come out of here. You can come out, but if you went in and those good old tires on your Model T, nice and clean, put a little armor all on them, if you go down that road, even if you can back out, you're not going to back out in the same condition you went in. You follow? In other words, you can stop the guy and say, wait a minute, I resent you calling people stupid. Now, I don't take it personally, but you should not walk in here because somebody in here could have a mental problem. You should not walk in a public place and say, all right, I'm going to whip everybody that's stupid. For those of you that don't follow this, change that over. Surely you're not that stupid. You can change it into religious things, any kind of personal attack. But if you ever start defending that, if you ever start critiquing it yourself, if you ever start responding to it, wait a minute. Am I going to dig up Kyroots for the last 2 months before we even do tonight? That at times, one guy said, as strange, as improbable as it may seem in a finite world, seen with 2 eyes, at times, silence is better than a denial. You don't back up to that either, do you? Okay, where were we? Being stupid. We were still talking about how all of life on this planet is dependent upon self-reference and how it is especially true in man at the intellectual level. And thus we have his use of and his dependence on opinions and points of view, which are intellectual versions of, shall we say for the time being, something else. We certainly don't want to get into it, but we are dealing with no qualitative judgment on it. Points of view and people's opinion, which is all a manifestation of self-reference, intellectually. And on a little further tonight. Note this, that all opinions, all points of view, are products of collective thinking. That there is no such animal. It is not possible for an individual mind to in some way develop opinions on its own, which would be, in the sense I'm trying to get you to look at it, it's really ordinary mentation. That's why I keep insisting for the time being, I don't mean opinions in the ordinary connotation, or even worse than that, I guess, definition, that it's anything less than some statement of fact, that opinion is somebody's biased, partial, one-legged, one-eyed, fractured view of something. It could be according to the collective wisdom of that day. If one guy's but it doesn't matter. From a more complex view, it is all the same thing. And it's just what is ordinarily referred to as collective opinion or collective wisdom. It is simply collective opinion. And there's no fruitful use of this out in life, but you could make ordinary minds hear this and go, yeah, that's true. Simply on the basis that that which is called the truth, even scientifically, is open to change. It does change. And so in one sense, everything that's even called the truth, everything that's called scientific reality, is simply opinion. It is a point of view, and at that time it may be the prevailing point of view. It may be the defensible point of view. It may be the accepted point of view by the local institutions, by the cutting edge of human intellect in that time and in that place. But it is still, in a sense, a point of view. It is not some form of objective reality or objective truth. That would be, even from a scientific view, would be dogma. It would be fanaticism of a less than empirical form. So when I keep saying point of view and opinion, it is not an attack, but I am doing it separate from fact or thinking, because I am trying to get you to see how it is tied to man being an intellectual and physical, but being an intellectual, self-referring system. That the intellect could not, any more than the body, could not exist, could not thrive without being able to regulate itself. And the self-regulation would perhaps be the more common form that people would want to use physically, that the body does regulate itself. The mind regulates itself. But rather than to make it sound as though it is simply a somatic, it's simply a physical description we're making, because men, of course, at the ordinary level cannot see or refuse to admit that their brain is not all that unlike their spleen, all right, their liver, make you feel better. And so instead of just calling the mind and the intellect self-regulating, it is really self-referring, because since it can talk, what is not normally taken into account, except unless I've beat you over the head with it long enough, is out in life. What you're continually confronted with, is people telling what kind of guy they are. But not on the basis. It doesn't start out that way. They don't interview famous people. They don't have an expert. And the man come up and say, well, to hell with my field of expertise. I want to tell you about me. I don't know. It is, they say, welcome here. And the guy says, well, I'm glad I could be here. My plane was late. But we appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule, being the famous busy person that you are, to be here. Well, that is true. As a matter of fact, as I was saying to Sinatra and George Bush the other night, the point being that the human intellect, unless it is making self-reference, cannot operate. And if we must cover it right quick, you can, in very limited fashions, find instances of the mind apparently operating in a non-self-referring manner. And you get into, generally, the only thing you'd be confronted with, and in your individual life, it's of no consequence whatsoever, but would be in the areas of truly theoretical science or mathematics, which is not truly an exception, but I'm not going to fool with it. It's a waste of time. Diminishing returns, I guess, sounds better. But in everything else, and it's not seen as such, and if it was pointed out, and if we were ordinary people pointing it out, and you were ordinary people listening to it, you would take it as being a what? A well-deserved criticism. But it's not. And that is that everything else, unless we were just talking about things of almost no consequence, purely theoretical science, or down to things that are not scientific, but are of such short-lived duration that even the Smithsonian Institute goes, what? And that is my old example that you walking up to a guy and he's standing there waiting on a corner, you say, where's 4th Street? And the guy says, 2 blocks down. You go, thanks. Now you could say, if you want to for a second, that almost belies all the operations of the human intellect being based upon self-reference. Like I said, it's still not. Because this man does not know, even by dictionary definitions, he does not know that 4th Street's 2 blocks down. Now I'm not going to stop and fool with this because this is not some kind of migraine course in philosophy or symbolic logic. But if I did have some, school here of philosophers or would-be logicians dressed up in their carp suits, at any rate, I could show you that even that is based on self-reference. It's his opinion, even though it appears to be a city fact. It's 2 blocks down, sure enough, there it is. But at any rate, beyond that, everything else, all the world of man in the social context, educational, sociological, religious, political, everything is a point of view, and the ordinary intellect is no person's fault. The intellect has to have that. It is self-referring. The mind is regulating itself when it talks, in the same way that your digestive system, your physical, to cut it right quick in two, separate, your physical system, just again, assuming you're just walking around sane, is continually checking itself. How am I doing? Taking its temperature. You understand that your stomach is checking. Do I have enough to eat? Do I need to go to the bathroom? Do I need more to eat? This is doing that, except it is not recognized. And if Parts of Life Body ever points it out, which Parts of Life Body does, but at ordinary level, it comes out as an attack. It's why it can be ignored, because as long as you're playing on the merry-go-round, as long as you're playing with polarized energy, and somebody comes in and says, all right, we're going to round up and brand and maybe shoot all the dumb people. And there you are standing, and you think, hey, I resent that. Unless you go, hey, let me help. I'll point them out to you. You got to do something, see? You take it as being an attack, and you either got to defend yourself or try to join in. Another way that they do it in some areas is, you suddenly, being one of the dumber ones there, you suddenly want to slide away from the bar and get there next to them like you've been with them all the time, going, yeah, we'll get them. So to try to point this out is a waste of time in life. And those who try to point it out, of course, are wasting their time, but it is a splendid hobby, one of the cheaper ones. Life has sanctioned it for lo these many years, whatever lo these many years means, but it's been lo these many years. Everything that the intellect ordinarily says, it's impossible to escape it, is based upon self-reference. That a person is telling you what kind of guy they are. I don't care if they're pouring ashes over their head, which I'm stretching it because they would not be all that ordinarily sane, but if they're playing fake humility and giving, well, I don't know for sure, but this is my opinion, which, by the way, is very common for people to play that game and say it's my opinion. See, take that if you were listening. But other than that, other people do not believe, or they would not normally think that, well, I'm in some way referring to myself. I'm telling what kind of guy I am when I start talking about something. I'm not actually doing that because my field of expertise is Eastern Europe post-WW2. And so when I'm talking about the kinds of forces that have impacted on that part of that continent, especially in the last 2 years, being derived from the growing dissatisfaction with planned economies and etc. And the man can, there he is, he's got a stage. got an audience. He's got a book on a list somewhere. And you can say, well, the man's expressing his expertise. He's only talking about facts, things that he knows about. I know out in life it seems that way. And he could say, well, I'm not even talking about myself. It's not possible. Do you understand? The reality of this also, I pointed out, but I point out again because it's very, I know, slippery. But the reality of this keeps seeping out into life, especially in religious areas, coming out as directives about you should not be egotistical. Conversely, the gods, the fates, the better lives, possibilities smile upon a man who's humble. The reality behind it is what I'm telling you. It's got nothing to do with religion, got nothing to do with being a smart ass, it's got nothing to do with trying to grab center stage and get everybody's attention. It's not that. And it's got nothing to do with offending the gods, obviously. What it is pointing out, without knowing it, is that a superior form of intelligence would be, if it were possible, to think in a way that was non-self-referring. That's what it's pointing out. It is, at any ordinary level, impossible. It is not part of the evolutionary reality on this planet now. And to say it could be closer than it was, for all you know, than it was 5,000 years ago when Buddhists and Hindus were talking about such as this. And don't anybody write me and tell me when Buddha lived. Thousands of years ago. 2,500 and then 5,000, all right? Jesus. But I could have been talking about his older brother. The original Buddha. How's this for self-referring? But it's hard when you have to learn your history from classic comic books. Plus suffering from brain damage, which was not my fault. I've been sick. The reality is this. Behind all these, since some of you got a hold of that, all of you are aware of the fact that all religions and lots of common sense and collective wisdom out in life, and probably you would think with some of your own opinion or your own decision, that it is not beneficial for a man, for his own development, to be an egomaniac. That there must be some other level of intelligence. Now that is the way it has come out in life about blessed are the humble, or that the gods, the fates, the powers that be would smile more favorably on you if you were not such a self-centered egomaniac. The reality is this. What it's saying is a higher form from a 3D view. A higher form of thought would be if there was some thought that was not limited to, was not tied to the gravity of self-regulation. That is, if you could think and it was something beyond your opinion. You've seen the slippery part, though. If I was ordinary people hearing this, some ordinary mind might have danced along with me for a few seconds and then go, wait a minute, you're back to saying opinion, but there are people who do not deal in opinion. Once somebody says that, a mind says that, what can you say back? You can say, yes, they do, because that's your opinion now. And they go, and they think about it, and they go, well, that's not true. So if you had nothing else to do, you and them can stand there on a well-greased dance floor, and you can dance forever. Or you can do it to yourself. Well. Unless the day comes when one time you have a thought that used to be called years ago things like mystical experiences and all that stuff by the children, that you have a thought that's not based upon self-reference. And then you know what it is. Of course, then you also understand where all of the mystics came from. All of the books taking up that first area in the Dewey Decimal System. All those books on... I like the way they put philosophy and metaphysics together, unless they change that in the classic comic books, at least in the library where some of us used to go. Put them all right there together, right up front. Have you ever noticed that? Does anybody ever go to the library anymore? It doesn't start off with mathematics or science or history or carpentry or something important. walk into a library in the Western world, and the first thing you're hit with, I could be a little off, so don't write me, all you damn librarians. But right there at the front, one of the first things you ever see is UFOs exposed. Well, that's the first thing. You go into the library, you go into Help Your Mind, and here it is, the Western world, and they say, where does it start? And there's aisle A, and you walk over, and the first things that strike you is not, how to fix a leaky toilet with Scotch tape or something worthwhile. It's UFOs want you. And right next to that, things like, Jesus lives with me in a shack outside of Tupelo. That's the first thing you have to. I guess any of you who want your metaphors and symbolisms of the inanimate sort, you could look upon the library as a metaphor for the history of man's intellectual development. If that's true, then notice when you go in the library, if there's 100 people in the library, 99 of them are hanging around the UFO section. Just for any of you who ever thought that humanity was going anywhere. All right, the tricky part, the part that's impossible at the ordinary level to see, is what I'm saying about opinions and points of view. Now, part of all that laughter and pseudo jokes, or even ersatz jokes, which is worse, I guess, is to realize that what I'm calling points of view, and some of you are getting, an opinion, is in no way a qualitative term. It is simply that everything a man knows of any consequence, the whole operation of a man's intellectual life at the ordinary level is based upon self-reference. It's not good, it's not bad, unless you consider being alive bad. But your brain, the secondary world of man, is doing the same thing in a healthy individual that your digestive system, that your respiratory system is doing continually. You don't think anything. If I say, well, wait a minute, it's your point of view that you breathe in and out in a regular fashion to keep the oxygen exchanging with the blood, and etc., enriching and you go, well, yeah, but that has nothing to do with my point of view. And of course, at the silent level, we're getting kind of silly, but it does have a point of view because your body's opinion is, I'd like to live. That's its point of view, and therefore it regulates itself. And it periodically sends up, assuming that your brain, well, if you're ordinary, I guess you call it your mind and personality, it sends up messages like, we're hungry down here. And when we're hungry, you should all be concerned, I want to live. So it regulates itself. But when you try to get into the intellectual area, since that's who you're talking to with people, and you say this thing is self-referring. Like I said, they might go with self-regulating a little bit better, but the hell with them. Because we're not talking to them anyway. But if you said everything that you do here is based upon self-referral, and then they'd want to wrestle you with it, like, no, you're just talking about opinions and etc., but I'm after facts. And the world's run by people, the heroes, the real intellects of the world, are people who deal in facts, not opinions. So don't put that shuck on me. If you say, well, self-regulating, because it has to stay self-regulating to stay sane, they might go for that. Well, yeah, you're right. You can't go around and suddenly somebody say, hey, I just saw the ghost of Columbus over here. And you go, where? And then you think, no, wait a minute. There's no such thing as ghosts. I've never heard it proven. All the scientific literature says there's no such thing. And so an ordinary person might say, all right, you do have to be somewhat self-regulating intellectually to stay sane, because you have to reject folly, in fact, out of hand. You must deny the importance of people's dreams and imagination. But if you say it's self-regulating, and they go, yeah, and then you say, all right, it's self-referring, you might drag them a little bit further if the dance floor is still slippery enough and they didn't have anything better to do. But then if you said, and all self-reference is opinion. All self-reference is, by its own definition, if they would go that far, by its own description, is a point of view. But see, they will always, intellect, which is a lesson within itself, if you can see it right quick, will deny just an ordinary sane person, and the more that they are city level intellectual, the more that they will dismiss, no, they'll resist, what I know is not my point of view. I may have some opinions, but I will express them. I will identify them as points of view. But that's not what my life is dealing with. That's not what I'm after. That's not what I depend on. And they're wrong. But you can't prove it. They take point of view as being something that is askew, something that is interfering with an objective view of life, when there is no such thing available at that level. So a point of view is in no way less than what your neighbor has. For an ordinary person to say, all right, if you say that we're just offering a point of view, all right, if I take that, but now I feel even worse because Mother Teresa is not operating from a point of view. George Bush. Not Margaret Thatcher. All right. If Milton was still alive, God forbid, but if he was still alive, he didn't, because you couldn't write that kind of crap with a point of view. It has to be something else. If you are alive at the ordinary level, if your intellect is working and it is healthy, it is self-referring. And if it is self-referring, remember, I'm still trying to lead you down a blind, primrose-strewn path to something else. Coming up sometime in the next decade or so, at the rate we're going. But the mind is based upon self-reference. That is, like that viewer said that he thought that he enjoyed some of the shows except the letters to the editor, because he said it was an egregious example of what he considered to be my less than glowing, or Kyroot's less than glowing, observations and notations about self-referring, when letters to the editor obviously are the same thing. In other words, if Kyroot's writing all that material, then he may be writing the letters to the editor, except, of course, that one, which that guy wrote, because why would Kyroot write one apparently taking himself, except that could be even a doubly egregious, or doubly glowing, according to your view, example of self-referring. But there was one other. It is only city soldiers that believe shooting yourself in the foot is a way out of combat. That's the part I think some of you missed on one of the Kyroots. Well, yes, everybody is self-referring, yes. But then it's only ordinary people that think, well, I'll get out of this battle. I'll get out of this man's army by shooting myself in the foot. The tacit inference being, for those of you who are, a few of you I know who are armored by tacit inferences, is that there might be other people shooting themselves in their self-referring foot, not to get out of combat. No. You mean you're going to shoot yourself in the foot so you can run faster? That you're going to take a rifle when nobody's looking, which doesn't matter, and shoot yourself in the foot, but instead of hollering, "Sarge, I was cleaning my gun," and for those of you that have never been in the service, after that it's expected to be a short trip to the discharge center. But the inference being that there's a possibility that somebody else would shoot themselves in the foot, never tell anybody, but if they were going to carry my picturization any further, it would be shoot themselves in the foot so that some way they could hold it out and they would put them in the front lines. Believe it or don't, that was still connected to self-reference. And believe this or don't, we're gone.